Hi everyone, a very good afternoon. I hope I'm audible and visible. Can you guys see me? Can you guys hear me? I just want to see the text in the chat box. If I'm audible and visible, a very good afternoon, and I hope everyone's keeping well. So, we'll be picking up some good CAT previous questions, majorly the RCs, and also some questions on para jumbles, if the time permits. Okay, so let me just share some basics on how CAT RCs are more or less like, and maybe some shadow on also the VA part, that is the para jumbles, the para summary, and odd one out, right? These are the three VA sections which we're also going to take care of today. Okay. So when we talk about any reading comprehension passage, it comprises of three sections. We all know it. There is an introduction where the author pushes in the claim of the passage, right? Then we have the body of the passage where the author throws light on some examples, gives a certain analogies, or repeats just to emphasize on the claim and trying to prove it well. And last of all, he would share his or her conclusion or his opinion, right? So this is a basic structure of any RC: introduction, body, and conclusion. Okay. On the basis of this, we do have the question types. Questions, of course, can be either direct questions or they could be indirect questions. So when we say direct question, it's going to be more of fact-based questions, and if it's going to be indirect, it is going to be more of inferential, right? The inference-based questions. So what are we supposed to do? We are supposed to figure out whether a certain statement being stated is true or false, whether something being stated can be derived from what the passage says or not, whether it can be inferred or not. Okay, so this is what we are supposed to do. When we talk about the fact-based questions, of course, it is more of a true-false question, but an inference question might entail question types like, which of the following do you think the author most disagrees with, right? Agree or disagree questions where the options are not stated directly, right? Or what is the primary purpose of the passage? Okay. Or what is the main point of the passage? Or it could also be the tone or the title of the passage, right? Tone of the author and title of the passage. So this would be more or less on the side of, hi Aritra, good to see you. So fact-based questions could be true, false. Inference questions could be more of agree, disagree, primary purpose, main point question, or also on the tone or title. What kind of a tone of the author is being mentioned in the passage, or is it, be debilitating? Is it very laudatory? Is it caviling? Is it critical? What tonality does a passage hold? And the title means picture ka naam kya rakhna hai. Okay, so what could be the heading we can categorize it under, right? So to entail these different question types, we have good passages for you to solve. Let me just take you back to the passage and then we'll try to solve the question. Would you like to have a look at this passage? It's really, really interesting. And at the same time, really tough passage. And then we'll be having a look at the options. Please have a look at the passage. It's a passage from Humanity. CAT is very famously known for throwing out passages on social science, humanity, which most of us do not like to read much. Okay, so please have a look at the passage. Let me know once you're done reading. I'll take you to the next slide. Let me know once you're done with both the paragraphs. I'll take you to the next slide, guys. Is the passage tough to understand? Guys, can you see me? Can you hear me? Can I get some answers in the chat box? If we are done with this, we can move ahead to the next slide. Okay, I'm switching to the next one. Bigger paragraph this time. Okay, can we read it together? So this is the last paragraph. We have some questions post this. All right, guys, let's have a look at the passage together. So it says the annual labor of every nation is the fund which originally supplies it with all the necessaries and conveyances of life, consist always either in the immediate produce of that labor or in what is purchased with that produced from other nations. Okay. So the first sentence, as I said, is more like an introduction to what the passage holds. Okay, what does it say? Annual labor of every nation is the fund which originally supplies it. If we talk about the annual labor, it's more like the fund which has been allocated for the labor, maybe that, or maybe the fund they're referring to is labor itself. Every nation is the fund which originally supplies it with all the necessities and conveyances of life. So, fund we mean all the basic necessities and conveyances of life which it annually consumes and which consist always either in the immediate produce of that labor or in what is purchased with that produce from other nations. Okay, so what it says is the annual labor of every nation is a fund which originally supplies it with all the necessaries and conveyances of life which it annually consumes and which consist always in the immediate produce of that labor or in what is purchased with that produce from other nations. Accordingly, therefore, as this produce or what is purchased with it bears a greater or smaller proportion to the number of those who are to consume it, nation will be better or supplied with all the necessaries and conveyances for which it has occasion. So, what is the understanding here? So it talks about the annual labor of every nation is the fund which originally supplies it with the necessaries and conveniences of life. That is the basic requirements of life. What is creating it, and which consist always either in the immediate produce of that labor purchased with that produce from other nations. Accordingly, therefore, as this produce or what is purchased with is a greater or smaller proportion of the numbers of those who are to consume it, even if there are just 50 people, who want to actually consume that labor of 100. What we mean by this is that maybe suppose there are only 50 people to be fed, but we are still importing equity of 100 people. Accordingly, therefore, as this produce or what is purchased with it bears a greater or smaller portion of the number of those who are to consume it, the nation will be better or worse supplied with all the necessaries and conveniences for it has occasion. Right? So if it is possible for the nation, it's gonna keep all that supply ready for it. Right? So introduction is not so interesting though, right? But it does open a window to the entire passage, that is of the funds and labor. But this proportion must in every nation be regulated by two different circumstances. Then it goes on to say that this proportion, if we talk about two sorts of proportion, it must be depending on two important factors. First is by the skill, dexterity, and judgment with which its labor is generally applied, and second by the proportion of the number of people who are employed in useful labor to that of those who are not so employed. Right? So we are taking this ratio of people who are won by skill. The skilled labor is more, favored, more preferred as compared to the not so skilled. And second thing the author says is the proportion of number of people who are employed to those who are not so employed. Okay. So that is what the paragraph talks about. The two things. One is the skilled labor, and second is the second important factor. The second important circumstance is the proportion or the ratio of the employee to the unemployed. Whatever be the soil, climate, or extent of territory of any particular nation, abundance or scantiness of its annual supply must in that particular situation depend on two circumstances. Then it says, what will be the climate? By climate, we refer to the environment. Whatever be the environment, what is important here is to understand the abundance or scantiness of its annual supply must, in a particular situation, depend on two circumstances. These two circumstances, which the author states here. Are we good with the two circumstances the author states here? Do we have any doubts so far? Okay. Now, as I stated, that body would have certain examples or certain factors being stated. Now, one paragraph of the passage might talk about one section of the book. Right? For example, there are five paragraphs. Right? For example, we have five paragraphs in a passage. So this P1 introduces you to the passage, right? This gives an introduction to the passage. Now P2, P4, this comprises the body of the passage. So here, if there are certain factors being stated, the next paragraph might drill down on one of the factors. Another one might drill down on the second factor. This can also be part of the body. That is what it says. Moreover, the abundance or scantiness of this supply seems to depend more upon the former of these two circumstances. So means more importantly, what it depends on is the labor skill. That is the skilled labor. Right? That is what they're looking for. Whatever country wants to import that fund, the allocated fund, they want under that allocated fund, the labor they get is full of dexterity. That person should be skilled. He should be judgmental. He should be good at with the decision, right? So, moreover, the abundance that is more than required or scanty, that is dearth, right? Dearth or less supply. Scantiness of supply seems to depend more upon the former of these two. So it will depend on how skilled the labor is than upon the latter as in than upon the ratio it refers to. And among the savage nations of hunters and fishers. So, what does it mean to say savage nation of hunters and fishers? By hunters and fishers, we do not mean the profession of hunting and fishing, right? What we refer to here is that hunters and fishers are the people who are like the big bees, like the big countries, the big developed nations who are not even trying to work. Like, for example, if we talk about South Korea, if we talk about UAE, where people don't want to work really, really hard. They want to do everything on the basis of the arms they use. Right? It could be arms, it could be terrorism, for example. So savage nation. Okay, of hunters and gatherers, every individual who's able to work is more or less employed in useful labor. That person who is involved in the savage nation, or anyone who's been hired, who's been working as a labor to the savage nation, has to be very, very skilled. These country skills are not so skilled, right? And fishers, every individual who's able to work is more or less employed in labor and endeavors to provide as well as he can the necessities and convenience of life for himself and such of his family or tribe as are either too old or too young or too infirm to go hunting and fishing. Infirm means they're not too weak, not too strong. Like they are weak. Okay. Such nations, however, are so miserably poor that from mere want they are physically reduced or at least think themselves reduced. Right? They are so miserably poor countries that from what they want, they are so reduced or at least think themselves reduced to the necessity sometimes of destroying and sometimes of abandoning nations themselves who are working as skilled laborers in the savage nations, these nations themselves, or it might also refer to the savage nations themselves being so poor. Such nations, however, are so miserably poor that mere want they are frequently reduced, or at least think themselves reduced to the necessity of directly destroying and sometimes abandoning their infants. They cannot even take care of their own family. They destroy the infants. They, leave the old diseased people to just linger around to perish with hunger, be devoured by wild beast, so that the wild beast can eat them. Like the disease, they get consumed to the disease. They get victim of certain problems. They just perish with hunger. Among civilized and thriving nations, among the civilized, so there is an analysis given here, right? The author on one side talks about the savage nations, stating that savage nations are full of those, the situation here is so bad that they have to abandon their infants, right? Or leave the elderly to just wither away, right? On the other side, he talks about the well civilized nations, civilized or thriving nations. For them, the author says, on the contrary, though a great number of people do not labor at all, do not work hard at all, many of whom consume the produce of 10 times. So even if there are just 50 people to be consumed, 50 people for which the food is required, they will take the intake of 100 people. They take 10 times. That's what I say. Maybe 500 people ask for a supply of 500 people. So, who consume the produce of 10 times, frequently of 100 times, more labor than the greater part of those who work. Yet, the produce of the whole labor of the society is so great that all are often abundantly supplied, and the workman, even of the lowest and poorest, oldest, if he is frugal and industrious, if he is weak, if he is weak in terms of money, if he is poor and he is hardworking. Industrious means hardworking. Okay. Poor means economically poor. That means he's weak, economically, and he's hardworking. May enjoy a greater share of the necessities and conveniences of life than is possible for any savage to acquire. So, very interesting passage, guys. This one talks about the paragraph here talks about people who might not even have access to really good quality of life, luxurious life, good quality of food. They get employed in a nation where, you know, which is all very rich, then even poor live to enjoy a better life, families and the country people living. So, did we understand the passage? Any doubts in the passage, guys? Please help me with that. I want everyone to please help me out with the GST of the passage now. When I say GST, what I'm looking for is before we move ahead to the questions, take 20 seconds or maybe 1 to 2 minutes, but let me give a general idea of the passage, the structure. When I say structure, It is the function or role of each paragraph. Okay. And P means tone and title. Okay. Before we move to the questions, you're going to help me with the GST of the passage. Giving you 2 minutes, quickly post it in the chat box. Then we move to the questions ahead. I'll take you back to the passage so that you can refer in case you want to refer anything. Taking you to the next slide. Okay. So, what's the general idea we're talking about? The first paragraph, it talks about, the first slide, if you look at, majorly talking about the annual labor of every nation, the fund allocated for it, which depends on two major circumstances. One is the skilled labor, and second is the usage of the labor. How proportionate is it to use the number of employed and unemployed laborers, the proportion of it. And then the next paragraph talks about whether the abundance or scarcity of the supply that will depend on former of the two circumstances, that is, how skilled the labor is. And then it goes on to talk about the two nation types. One is a savage nation which doesn't want to work hard, but want the best skilled labor to be employed. Who themselves, they are very poor. They might not have been able to take care of the families and they have to abandon some of their infants and elderly to linger away with the disease they are suffering from. And second sort of nations or countries it refers to as a civilized nation, where if any person from a poor nation goes to this country, a civilized, thriving country, he or she would feel a lot of abundance there. Everything is supplied abundantly. Even the food we consume is supplied of 10 times than the real consumption of the country. So if anybody who is frugal industrious becomes fortunate to join such a country as a labor, he or she would get to feel greater share of necessities and convenience as compared to the one who joins a savage nation. Okay? Tone is pretty much analytical. We are talking about two circumstances the entire thing depends on, and then the two types of nations. Right? Title would be more of the usage of labor as per the savage nations and the civilized nations. Okay? Now, let's move to the questions. Let's have a look at the questions and see if we're able to figure out the answers. What is the connotation of the term savage nations in the context of the passage? Connotation means talking about the tonality. Okay. The author talks about tonality here. Please have a look at the question. Let me know once done. Then we discuss it. Let me know if you're done. Just try to eliminate the options. Savage nations is being used in the second paragraph, second slide, third paragraph. It says, among the savage nations of hunters and fishers, every individual who is able to work is more or less employed in labor and puts in effort to provide as well as he can the necessities and convenience of life for himself and such of his family or tribe as are either too old or too young or too infirm to go hunting and fish. Right? This is where the savage nation is being referred. Now, what is the tonality of the term savage nation in context of passage? Countries which are the most part covered with forest. So nothing has been mentioned about forest or the. Countries which are primarily uncivilized, on the other side, it talks about the civilized nations. So this one set of countries is referring as savage nation could be uncivilized. So good reason to hold on to this option. Okay. Third option says having a large number of old, young, or infirm people. No, it doesn't say that the demography matters a lot. No? Countries in which hunting and fishing are the main occupations. No, it's not the fishing and hunting main occupation. It's like how they ruling the as savage nations. Not that the profession is majorly countries which are full of wild beasts. No. So answer is B, Bombay for this question. By savage nation, he refers to the undisciplined nations, the nations which are not really civilized or well, thriving nations, which are really poor. Okay, so B, Bombay is the correct answer. Please have a look at the next question. Then we discuss it. Please try to eliminate the options, guys, and understand that elimination does help, but only when you understood the question stem well. So please try to comprehend the question stem well first. The question being asked is called the question stem. So did we comprehend the question well? It says, according to the information in the passage, under which of these hypothetical situations will a country be most prosperous? So hypothetical means something we are assuming. Okay, it is not a true situation, but under which of the following situations do you think that a country will be most prosperous? Please try to eliminate. You'll get the answer. All right, 20 seconds more, then we discuss it. Just look for the best possible solution, the low hanging fruits. In which of the situation do you think the country will grow the most, be the most prosperous? How does the population and annual labor impact? Okay. All right, let's have a look at the question. According to the information, the passage of following hypothetical situation of the country be most prosperous as in doing the best. When the country has a high annual labor produce and high population, annual labor produce is high, but also the population is high. No. Low annual labor produce and low population is okay, but we want high labor, right? So low annual labor produce and high population is rather very contrary. If the population is high and labor being used is less, that's rather very negative. The country will not be so progressive. High annual labor produce and low population, yes, this is what we're looking for. And it's a hypothetical situation, right? It's a very utopian world where you have population is also low and you have high annual labor produce. When the country has many highly skilled workers, no, not just the skilled workers, but also the population has to be low. So answer to this question is C, Calcutta. I hope everybody answered it correctly. In case not, please Drop in your answers and I'd like to look at them again with you and try to help you out why a certain option is incorrect or why is a certain. Okay. If you're good with this, let's move ahead to the next one. Be careful with the question stem again. Please accept. Please eliminate the options if unable to find the right answer. Also, what goes with the passage is not correct this time. You're looking for something which is not true as per the passage. Okay. All right, let's have a look at the question. According to the information in the passage, each of the following could be a characteristic of savage nation except. So, what would not be the characteristic of savage nation? That is what we are looking for, right? Not necessarily negative, but if are not stated. As per the passage, what is a characteristic of savage nation? We can consider that option. He says some part of the population is involved in hunting and fishing. How can you say that some part of the population is involved in hunting and fishing? Right? So this is not referring to the profession any. Almost everyone who's capable of working is employed. Capable of working, everyone is employed. We are not sure. Poverty is prevalent across the nation. Not every time, right? So again, one we need to look at from the savage nation. So poverty is prevalent across the nation. Therefore, it's no. Everyone who's capable of working is employed. Not sure on this. Some part of the population is involved in hunting and fishing. Again, let's hold on to this, not eliminate. It's C we've eliminated for sure. Unemployed consume several times more labor than the employed, and at times people end up dead for want of food. Yes, this is also true about the passage, therefore not the answer. So A, B, and D is the best choice out of this. Part of the population is involved in hunting and fishing, even if we consider this to be true. That some, almost everyone who's capable of working is employed. Everyone who's capable of working is employed. That's what the passage also says. Right? So this is also right. True as per the passage, therefore it is not the answer choice. Unemployed consumes several times more labor than the employed. Is it A or is it D? Right for the passage. Every individual who is able to work is more or less employed in useful labor and endeavors to provide as well as he can necessities and conveyance of life for himself and such of his family or tribe as are too old or too young or too informed to go hunting and fishing. They cannot actually go out. For them also there is some profession is involved in hunting and fishing. So can we keep it as a profession here? Yes, and that's not my answer. So what I'm left with is unemployed consumes several times more labor than the employed. D is the correct answer because I'm looking for a feature or a characteristic which is not supportive of for that savage nation. So answer is D, Delhi. Any doubts so far? I hope not. All right, let's move ahead to the next question. Last question for the passage, and then we have a fresh passage. So, which of the following can most reasonably be inferred from the information in the passage? Right? It's an inference question, and we need to figure out, as per the passage, what can be inferred. So, it is a simple true or false question. You could have a look at the question. Simple true or false question, right? Best way for a poor nation to become prosperous is by drastically reducing its population of unemployed people. It doesn't ask us to reduce the population. Nature of work with the majority of people in a country are involved with largely determines the prosperity of the country. That nature of work we are in, we are not given the nature of work. Between two nations, nations with a higher annual labor will always be most prosperous. In uncivilized countries, people take extra care of their infants. It's rather opposite. Prosperous nations are characterized by an equal distribution of wealth, with the rich getting richer and poor getting poorer. Can we say the poor people are also getting poor here? Not really, right? So if we eliminate the options, A seems to be still better way for a poor nation to become prosperous is by drastically reducing its population of unemployed people. That means employing those people more. Nature of the work that a majority of people are involved, no. So A is the better choice. When we looked at all the options, we couldn't find a better choice other than A, right? A should be the right choice. Okay, what we'll also do is we'll be going through a quick passage. Let's go through this together. Just giving you 2 minutes to go through it. This is passage for you. Not a very interesting passage, but good for you to start with. All right. Can we go through it together? Let's go through the passage together. This 2 minutes, guys. We can go through it. Guys, are we done with the passage? Can we discuss it together? So it says, author of the Affluent Society argued throughout his long and distinguished career for a better balance in advanced capitalist societies between private affluence and evident public poverty. So he's referring to, what does he refer to? You can basically talk about it here in two sense. One, he's talking about the affluent society. Right? The author of the affluent society means the rich, the wealthy society, argued throughout his long and distinguished career for a better balance in advanced capitalist society. And the other society they're referring to is the capitalist society, right? Between private affluence and the evident public poverty. By public poverty, he meant that he impoverished, that is the weak, the poor, disenfranchised citizens, but also the poor infrastructure such as inadequate roads, state school provision, and the lack of state intervention to preserve the environment against the excesses of industry. Right. So if it's referring to poverty, in terms of public, even if there's an affluent society, like the society has 50 people who are very rich, but there are 60 people who are poor. And when it comes to society being called an affluent society, what we want is the education system should be good, the healthcare system should be good, the infrastructure, the parks, the roads and infrastructure, everything should be up to the mark. That is when we can term a society to be an affluent society. But here, what it's being referred is that by public poverty, he meant the impoverished, disenfranchised citizens, but also the poor infrastructure, such as inadequate roads, state school provision, and the lack of state intervention to preserve the environment against the excess of industry. The affluent society was to be achieved through measures, more active government welfare programs, state planning, and most controversially, redistribution of wealth through taxation. That is what they wanted. कि आपको क्या करना पड़ेगा, आपका जो पूरा टैक्सेशन वाला वेल्थ है उसको आपको रीडिस्ट्रीब्यूट करना चाहिए, या तो ज्यादा टैक्स करो, जो ज्यादा एफ्लुएंट लोग हैं, ज्यादा elite class of the society were earning more, they should be taxed more, which were very much out of favor during the brief period when monetarism dominated both politics and economics. Of course, Galbraith had been making the case for these policies long before monetarism, and he continued to do so long after its demise. It's referred to as the Galbraith, policies. He had written certain policies, and now it's referred as, of course, Galbraith had been making the case of these policies long before monetarism, and he continued to do so long after demise. It's a demise that he most certainly hastened. And he did not want that this affluent society should go on for long. It should be living for long. With his profound yet witty criticism of that ideology. So he did not like this ideology of having an affluent society, though the entire public was facing the poverty. For a European, it is hard to understand why he did not embrace socialism, but he always advocated the mixed economy. Politically and as an adopted American, he was a Democrat. Right? If we talk about an adopted American, he was a Democrat. If we talk about Republican and Democrat here, intellectually, he was a lifelong disciple of Keynes and greatly influenced by the post-war American New Deal. Right, New Deal. So, overall passage, what does it talk about? It talks about the affluent society, how it looked like. But on the contrary, it was not really as affluent as it seemed. Why was it not as affluent? Because one side it talks about the affluent society being comprised of rich people, but on the other side, the poor were suffering because there were no infrastructure, so no roads being maintained. State school provision was also not that good. So all of this shows lack of state intervention to preserve the environment against the excess of industry. So all of this shows that there was so much of a bifurcation of society being called an affluent society, but on the other side, it doesn't show those features because the real, uh, people were suffering from poverty. The public poverty thing was not being addressed. We can't call the society to be uh, an affluent society. So, if we look at the GST of the passage, general idea is an affluent society, how it seems to be, it wasn't. And so, Galbraith addressed this issue, this ideology, and eventually led to its demise, that is, killed this entire ideology. And if you look at the tone, what is the tone? It's very much descriptive. He doesn't criticize anything, he does state that what an affluent society was and how it seemed to be for the public, general public, Were they actually as affluent as a part of the society? No. The society was called as affluent society, but they were not as rich as the others were. If they were even getting the not getting the basic requirements like impoverished advertisement was one problem, poor education, poor infrastructure, and then no actions being taken by state to intervene when it comes to the environment protection. tone is also descriptive. All right, we'll be discussing the questions related to it in the next session. Let's keep it here, guys. Thank you so very much, and I hope you enjoy the session. Join us for the next Tuesday session as well. Thank you so much.